Hey everybody, this is Mike Pearl from the Digital Transformation Project team, and in this video I want to go over TR qualifications as well as the Qualification Engine, as well as how to manage qualifications for a specific volunteer. So TR qualifications, you can see the current list here. Most of them are going to be training related, so at the culmination of usually some kind of in-person training as well as a bunch of online courses, if everything is passed and you show that you have a certain level of expertise and that you are safe and you're not going to accidentally hurt yourself or somebody else, then you can be granted specific qualifications of all different shapes and sizes. So there's a few in here that take a lot of energy and effort to get, and a few more that just take a few classes to get. So qualifications are how we can quickly look to see what somebody knows, especially for operations. Whenever we're deciding, for example, there's an incoming wave to a big operation with 50 people on it, and we want to be able to quickly understand the different skill sets that are coming in so that we can properly allocate them across multiple strike teams. That's where these qualifications are really going to come in handy. In addition, we have the ability to basically create a qualification to match any criteria, and so we're doing that with things like deployable as well, and we'll probably end up doing a lot more like deployable because it simply allows us to automate it without having to spend too much time manually adding and removing qualifications. Okay, so if we were to click into any of these, you'll be able to see who's in there. I'll look at damage assessment trained, for example. Because we're in our development environment, there's not too many people here, but we can also look at what the criteria is for that. If we go look at damage assessment, in order to get that qualification through the qualification engine, then we're looking at a contact who's active, who doesn't already have the qualification, and then we're going to look at their records to see if they have an event that says Disaster Analytics 2, and if they attended and passed that particular event. So when people meet that criteria, then we have this new thing called the Qualification Engine, which is going to automatically grant that particular qualification. So if we go look at damage assessment trained, we can see we're calling it something, we're giving it all the criteria here. So that same criteria I just showed, this is another version of that criteria called Fetch XML, and it's the same thing, it's just kind of a little bit more machine language. So we're saying that if they meet all this criteria, we want to grant them the damage assessment trained qualification. And so that way, for these things that have hundreds or even thousands of people that can get the qualification, then we are able to now automate it, where normally we would have to have somebody manually add and remove. Okay, so speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about how to manage qualifications. There's a couple different ways to grant it. For these qualifications that are easier to get, they are typically in the qualification engine. So you can see Chainsaw 1, Damage Assessment, and Core Ops. We have hundreds if not thousands of people that have these, and so we don't want to have somebody sitting there manually adding and removing. But for things like HEO3, because there's very few people that have the opportunity to take that each year, then the cadre coordinator is still able to add the qualification simply by typing the name, or national training, for example. And looks like I was already in there once, so I'm going to just get rid of one of these. So by adding that, you will notice in my contact record that I should now have the qualification of HEO3, and there's a new section under events and training for qualifications, and these are all the different qualifications that we have that we are currently tracking on. So by granting the qualification here, it also basically put a yes in this HEO3 qualified field. And you can see that my contact record has a couple other qualifications at the moment. And if we were to look at my actual qualifications here, we should see the new one. It's actually right there on top. Now, so that's one way of granting the qualification, is by clicking the plus sign and putting it in manually. And people will have to do that for the harder qualifications, just because we want to keep tabs on who has those, and the cadre coordinators can keep track of people that are coming and going. For the ones that have a whole lot of people, like deployable is going to have a whole lot of people, then we have the very specific criteria here, and I can show you what that actually looks like. Now this is the deployability criteria that we have at the moment, but this fluctuates and is subject to change. So right now we're saying we're looking for contacts, which are our volunteer base. They have to have a date of birth older than 18, or sorry, they have to be older than 18. They have to have name and phone number for emergency contact. It has to have some kind of data in it. Background check status has to be cleared. They have to not already have the qualification, and this is really just for the engine itself, so it's not constantly granting the same qualifications to the same people over and over every night. And then there's a new field here for deployability ICS certification status, and I'll show you that in a moment in the contact record. It basically says that we want for it to have a value of both 100 and 700 complete. So it'll first go look for all these people, and then it's going to look even further and look at their transcript records to say they also need to have one called TR101 with a status of completed. We can also dig into, instead of the transcripts, we can look at event registrations for in-person classes, and we can say that event registration for these people has to be, in this case, Disaster Data and Analytics 2, they have to have attended and they have to have passed. So we can basically pull in whatever criteria we want. That gets copy-pasted into here, and then we grant whatever the characteristic is here automatically. So if you're seeing this and you have an idea about another qualification, some kind of attribute that we can track that will make it easier to pull stats or something like that later on, then we can add that. So another thing we're probably going to add to the engine is T3 status. And so we'll probably have criteria that says if they've been to any of these classes and it shows that they are attended and passed, you know, all the stuff that's considered T3, then we will automatically grant a qualification called T3, and that way we can then go count later on, just like what's the total number of people that are T3 qualified, for example. Okay, so last but not least, in order to remove a qualification from somebody, like let's say that I'm currently in HEO 3, but then I do something really unsafe, or I just, you know, I'm leaving the country and I no longer want to be in HEO 3, or whatever the case may be. In order for this to go away and for my qualification to go away, then the new mechanism to handle that is by clicking this button over here, which says see the records associated with the view. So we call it the associated view. Click into there, you're going to see all my qualifications. We want to pick the one that's HEO 3. And then notice there's no deactivate here yet, but as soon as you select something, now we have a deactivate button, and so we want to select that. It's going to deactivate that HEO 3 record, which is now it's gone from the Mike Pearl contact. And if I go back to the contact, what we should see, and I'll give it a few seconds here, we should see that now the HEO 3 entry is set to removed. So let's give it another couple seconds. There's basically a workflow in the background that handles this piece of it. It takes a little bit for it to kick in. There we go. So now it's actually gone. HEO 3 is set to removed. And where this comes into play is for either vetting purposes or mobilization for operations or strike team allocation. There's actually a view now that you can see in contacts. If you hit the drop down, it's called Volunteer Qualifications. And what it has is people's TRID, name, email, phone, and then also all the different qualifications that we're currently tracking. All of these are operationally based for now, but we can add and remove from this list as we need to. I also added the state and territory so that people can use the filter button and drill down into a geographical area that they care about. And these are all sortable. So for example, I believe I have RCI as well. So if we sort by RCI, we can see anybody that has a yes. So here's my record, and we can see at a glance all the different things that I'm qualified for. So here's my RCI, here's my Sawyer 1, and I'm removed from HEO 3 for whatever reason. It could mean that I, was unsafe, or that I simply left the team for whatever reason. So that's it. So we talked about the high level of a qualification. We now have a qualification engine where we can automate the granting of a qualification, especially for those ones that have a high level of either turnover or the high number of people that are getting the qualification. And then we talked about how to add and remove a qualification from a contact. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll go from there.